get started. I'm Chuck Wetstein. I'm your congregational president this year. This is my second year on the council, and I've served on the advisory team for 2 years. So I've been working on values and goals for the last couple, 2-3 years, if you will. And so today's session or information is to share with you what the council's been kicking around and some of our conclusions and thoughts like that. And so I've got our purpose statement up here: together, boldly living and sharing God's grace with all. And I emphasize, you know, the pastors or the congregations or members years ago have kind of focused on that word, boldly. And I guess I'd like to think that we are acting pretty boldly with the idea that we're setting goals, we're setting values, and the fact that we're launching into a capital campaign and lots of things that are exciting about that. And I recall 2 years ago when Brian Hicks, who was president then, said, hey, we're acting boldly if we proceed forward with the youth minister. And if you just come from the session down below, you had to have a lot of excitement about what's happening in our youth ministry and activities there. I don't know if everybody's got a copy of this. We've got some handouts, and you've got copies of the goals and values to reference and read along or think about. So, goal-setting process. I guess last year the council set goals. It was the first time that we're aware of that goals have been set for our congregation, and it was something new. The congregation or the council worked closely with the advisory team during the year to look at changes and talking about goals and things of that sort, so we made some good progress. This year it started with a weekend retreat. Our weekend retreat was in the first weekend of February. We met for a day and a half, 2 days, to kick around values and goals and spend some time doing that. So, time in scripture and prayer. We were guided by the Holy Spirit. And during that process, we followed an ELC process and guideline. And that guideline is called the annual roadmap. And it's a 7-step process or guide. It's not a process, but a guide that helps us set our congregational goals. And the process covers 7 areas, or 7 steps, if you will. And those areas were values, stakeholders, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and then ultimately the results and the goals, and then a communication plan for sharing this with you. So we're going to talk about all of that today. Because the goals come out in late February, early March is when we kind of concluded, we've kind of arbitrarily have said, well, we're going to focus on our goals from March to March. It doesn't mean that the goals disappear. The goals that we did last year aren't disappearing. There's a lot of stuff associated with the hunger that we're going to be continuing to focus on this year as we go forward. So, I don't do this very often, so wish me luck. Here we go. So, the benefits of setting goals. I guess it's all about developing a plan, an annual roadmap to set a path going forward. And so, the whole idea is to join God in the mission and to move our congregation forward. And so it isn't yearly plan. It's not a long-term or a 3-year plan. And you know, maybe we need to be thinking about a 3-year plan with everything that's out in front of us, with the facilities changes that we're going to be going through and some of those things. We probably need to be looking at how that might come about. But with that, there's lots of opportunities, but there's going to be some frustration. There's going to be a lot of disruption. And so we all need to be aware of that. We need to kind of hold it in and proceed forward, because it could be a little frustrating in 2019 as we're going through this building process. But the flip side of all that, there's a lot of excitement in the air. I mean, if you're at the 8:15 service, it started at 8:15, I just go there. I guess the music programs, you saw a couple of new music programs that are going to be kicking off. And so this is some of the excitement that I think that we see, and I have to believe that it's not just about facility, but it's also about setting some goals that can help spur this process along and set this path forward, if you will. So it's not about a status quo. We want to move forward. And these next 4 are really about what the benefits are. Enhancing and adding ministry options, growing and strengthening some of our ministry teams, thinking about our council. How do we become visionaries, thinkers, versus just doers? Doing the task of, hey, the kitchen needs to be cleaned up, I'm going to go down there and clean it up, or I'm going to bring a casserole. How do we get out of that mode and think about ourselves moving forward with a lot of things? And lastly, we're building a foundation for future ministry growth. It's to be forward-thinking in this entire process, if you will. Stop me anytime if you want. So there's the ELCA has a Congregational Vitality Project, and that aided us in our discussions. And it reflects on 15 different congregational life areas. And so this is a list of those 15 areas. And last year we used that same list. So we've used the same list for the last 2 years to discern what some of the values are of our congregation. And so we have the leadership team, the council, past council members, the pastors, discerning over these and discussing these, breaking into teams to talk about what does all of this mean. Last year we chose 4 values, and this year we chose 4 values. And so just to give you kind of an idea, the first one, worship nurtures people's faith, was one of our values for 2017. Incorporating new members and building strong. I should have probably highlighted those, it'd be easier than pointing, but the next one was build strong, healthy members. So where's that? Right? Up there? Down. Okay, there we go. There you go. I have a fat thumb. Okay, there we go. And the last one was incorporating new members. I knew that was one of them, so that's out there too. So those were the 4 areas that we talked about last year, and it doesn't mean that there's anything better or worse on these values. They're all important, but we as our discussions proceeded forward, we chose those 4 last year. And this year it happens that we've chosen 2 that are the same as last year, and those are worship nurtures people's faith, and a positive force in the community or in Marble Falls. So let's go into the values that we selected for 2018. So, worship nurtures people's faith, a positive force in the community, equip members to share their faith with others, and excitement about the congregation's future and our role in our community. So those are the 4 areas that we've kind of said are important. And how do we use that, along with some of those other steps of what are our strengths, what are our opportunities, what are our aspirations, where do we want to be when we grow up, kind of thing. And so those are the 4 that we focused on. So we're going to use those 4 then as we go forward to select and talk about our goals. So what did the goals process do? It used those 4 values. It looked at our stakeholders in the congregation. So which members, small groups, small committees, how do they all fit into this thought? Went through a lot of different goals. So each, as we broke up into committees and teams and talked about this, we considered a lot of goals. We had many different versions of goals, tweaking this word and tweaking that word to get to where we want it to be. But we also find that we can't do everything. And so if we create a roadmap, we want to pick those most important things, if you will, that we seem to be thinking about, and are going to focus on those so that we have that path or that roadmap kind of going forward. want to see if there's anything I want to cover before I go to the next one. So, so I guess there's 5 ministry goals for this year. So, and they cover different ministries, meaning that we're going to focus on the youth. We're going to focus on St. Peter's Lutheran School. We're going to focus on our music ministry. We're going to focus on our small groups. And we're going to focus again on our leaders. And so a couple of those are the same as last year, leaders and music ministry. Because last year we talked about leaders being kind of a longer term one. In music, everyone's excited about music, and it's going to be an exciting year again this year in that category. So if you remember, in 2017, we had 5 goals. 6 goals, I'm sorry, we had 6 goals last year. This year we're going to have 5. And those goals, just kind of a quick nutshell, one was around youth ministry. And the goal was to hire a youth minister and have that in place by the summer of last year. We've done that. I think we've moved forward. All of you have helped support that ministry, and we can see the dynamics and the excitement that's coming out of that one. The second one was to empower our members' gifts, so we could, and I use the term building a foundation for our ministries. So how do we get our members to feel free to share their interests, their capabilities, and their strengths to help us grow in that area? The third one centered on our worship experience, and then that committee did an outstanding job at identifying some goals and some activities, and you've noticed some of those things during our service this past year. We tried a few things out over the summer, and they have worked very well, and they're continuing, and you can see that they've already got some plans in mind for as we go forward in 2018. We had 2 goals last year that centered on the hunger needs of our community. And boy, there is a list that is about 6 inches deep with activities that committee has worked on in our social outreach committee. And focusing on the Helping Center and Blessings in a Backpack, just many, many things there. And I guess the thing that I'd like to do is just encourage more and more of us to actually get involved in that, instead of having those just be some small groups of people that are doing that, and to increase and wrap up who's involved in supporting those ministries. And the last goal was to share the faith journey of some of our senior members, and to have them share what's going on, and to pass that along to our future generations, if you will. So, let's take a look at those goals, I hope. All right, so the first goal for 2018 is surrounding the youth, and support our youth ministry, our staff, our youth, children, and programming by encouraging our families to more fully live and support the baptismal promises daily through increased participation in our youth ministry programs. That's a mouthful. There's a lot there. I've taken a little bit of heat for making these too wordy. Even my wife gets after me for making things wordy. So, but we needed to capture what is youth ministry. It's just not supporting our youth minister. It's also the youth and the children. Is it just the youth, or is it our children? It covers all of those aspects. And then the programming that's associated with it too. So there's a lot there. And we've all made this baptismal commitment. And so how do we do that? So what'll be happening now is the committees have already started going out and developing goals for this year. And we've got some leaders. We've identified leaders for each of these. I should have maybe remembered who all those leader teams were. But so they'll each be involved in how to identify goals within their committee that will support this goal with a timeline on it, to say this is what we're going to do and how and when we're going to be trying to achieve that.
Well, those are really the objectives, right? Yeah.
This is the objective. This is not to have the actual
measure objectives.
Exactly. So So I kind of get a little bit of knock on this one too, to me, goals need to be SMART. The acronyms for SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So if we can think about those, so time-bound, we won't be able to be thinking about this on a daily sort of basis. What are we trying to do? We're trying to support this activity. We want to encourage our families. Is this realistic? Absolutely. Is it achievable? Absolutely. So we're trying to encompass those 5 activities or areas in each of these goals as we go forward. Doesn't say how we're going to do it. That's the committees to help. The school. Strengthen the mutual awareness and increase the integration of the school and the congregation through our common connection of growing our faith. So, how do we work with the school? How do we bring that together? How do we get them more involved in the activities of our congregation and vice versa? So, hopefully we've kind of said, we need to figure out how we're going to do that, and how to make that a stronger unit, and how to share that with the community. There's a waiting list to get in. I think we have 42 members. There's a waiting list to get in. They're going to be adding a class. There's talk of adding a class in 2018. It's not going to take more space. They're just going to shuffle people around. So it's exciting what's happening there. We need to know that. We need to brag about it, because it's a great ministry that we have. Music ministry. Enhance, encourage music opportunities within our worship services and at special events, incorporating all ages and a variety of instruments beginning over the summer of 2018. Now I can tell you we don't have a rock band coming in this summer. At least I'm not aware of that yet.
You're going to be the last to know, Chuck.
But we do have some neat ideas, and we've already seen the 3 of the goals that the music worship team has come up with, and they're exciting. And if you were at the early service today, you had to be excited about that. If you're going to the second service, get ready. It's going to be some exciting news. Small groups. Small groups ministry. We have many small groups that are out there doing their ministry thing. They act independent of the committees. These small groups are tied to our committees, so there's a way to have these small groups communicate to the council without 50 people knocking on the pastor's doors for something. So the idea is to have these small groups aligned with our committees. So this is an area that we have some work to do. Improve the communication between our small groups and our committees, and increase the awareness of our small group ministries to the congregation. Encouraging at least 1 new small group per year. Committees will evaluate the small group activity in July and December. So, it's okay if a small group disappears, if it's not functioning, or it was a good thing to have at this point, then good. If we don't need that tomorrow, that's okay. So some of our small groups have continued to grow. They're out there. A lot of them are affiliated with the fellowship aspects of what we do. The Green Team would be an example of this, and the Green Team reports to the stewardship type committee, environment, funds, things like that. So I don't even know if, I think most of our small groups are communicated. There's a list someplace. I can tell you that we have a retiree roundup group that had 60+ people come to one of these meetings last month or the month before, and that's considering that it started out at maybe 15 to 20 2 years ago. They've been able to develop programming over the years to say, hey, here's what's happening, here's a need. The pastor and Brian Hicks and some outside speakers came in to do a 2-part thing, if I remember right, on that, and it was the largest turnout they've had. But we've gotten some feedback that our committees are busy. I mean, this is a volunteer job. We don't get paid for this. So, you know, they got a life, they got kids, a lot of them. So it's a lot to expect. But, you know, we need to somehow evaluate what's happening in our small groups. You know, to say, okay, well, this small group isn't working anymore, and we'll just put that on the side burner for a little bit, and maybe there's a need for it to come back, and we'll have our notes and our history to be able to reflect on it. The advisory team, led by Steve, was very instrumental in saying, hey, we need to have a binder. That's what he called it, a binder that captures everything that the committees need to know what their responsibilities are, and what the chairs and the liaison members from council know what their responsibilities are. And so we've tried to talk about that, share that, and communicate that. So, you know, it's change, and change isn't easy, but there's been a lot of progress. So we need to improve this communication, and we need to increase the awareness of those groups so that you can be a part of some of those small group ministries that we have going on out there. Leaders. So this is similar to one from last year, almost word for word. Empower our individual members' interests, capabilities, and strengths to enhance our committees while building a more visionary council. The last part is change. This will be a developmental goal that will be reviewed by the council every 3 to 6 months, lasting, this reads word for word. There's some words cut out here. We're probably only going to do this for about a year in this part right here. So, so every 3 to 6 months we sit down and we say, okay, what's happening within our leadership? What's working? What's not working? And develop our people to be that. And if we can create, I think it was Jeanette Kloss said, well, we need to develop this leadership pipeline so that we've got members of these small groups or these committees that can develop and take on leadership positions and grow. So I kind of like the phrase, building a foundation for our future ministries. So, let's see. So, what do you think? This is where we are. Thoughts?
I think they're good. I have a small correction on the first slide. You said this was something new. We did this before. In fact, I think Steve was the president of the council when we spent a lot of time establishing goals and very specific objectives. One was to hire a youth minister / associate pastor. And that's when just before we hired Pastor Youngcheck. Only as associate pastor. Our advisor convinced us not to combine the two. But yes, we did this before, very specific goals.
Yeah, that was that a part of the listening team, I believe?
No, it was before then.
Okay.
There was
Transition team?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna add, kind of related to something you said, Chuck, and what Jerry just said, we've had what I would see as a few different phases of some long-ish range planning. I don't know if anyone really does long-range planning anymore because things change so quickly, but and those have had different titles instead of just long-range planning. I would see the advisory team in that capacity now, the listening team, the transition team when Pastor Henry retired, which was part of, I think, what you're talking about specifically there. So some of those things have happened, but this having goals for just the year, which this process leads us through, is pretty specific and a little tricky. To Chuck's comments that you know, congregations have a tendency to want to do everything and try to do it all well, and that's just not really possible. And this really pushes us to pick a few things to focus on for the year.
Other thoughts?
I think this is a great roadmap, Chuck. I go up to the second one from the bottom. Change councils from doers to thinkers. We've been trying to accomplish that probably ever since I've been a part of this church. I think it's a huge thing to try to get that accomplished, and that's going to take time to do. I mean, like I said, we've been trying for a long time. This is probably the best values and goals meeting that I've attended, so I'm really excited about that. Because the council needs to be the thinkers for, as Pastor said, at least the future of St. Peter's, and not so much about, you know, who's making casseroles next week. and that really filters down to the committees have to take responsibility and be a part of that system so that the council is freed up to be the thinkers of our congregation. And so that to me is the benefit of setting the goals and empowering the committees to be a part of it and be a part of the solution, and not just kind of sit on your duff and do nothing. I mean, you really have to be engaged and involved. So I like it, Chuck, and I like the goals that you all have set. I think that's really good that we continued with a few of the ones that we were passionate about last year, and brought in some other stuff. So yeah, nice job.
So one of the things you don't see up there is anything related to the building.
Mm-hmm.
Steve probably knows.
That's just something that's gonna happen to help support the minister growth we're gonna see. Now, I said there's gonna be some frustration. There absolutely is gonna be a lot of frustration. I visited with Steve this morning, and I said, okay, so as we're thinking about 2019 and what's gonna happen there, we need to be ready in September, October with kind of some ideas as to where the quilter's gonna meet, where's the choir gonna practice. I mean, everybody is gonna be disrupted. So we need to start putting plans in place to make sure we're ready when they start tearing walls down and tearing up the parking lot. Where are people gonna park? And do we need the county sheriff out here to direct traffic, because it's gonna be chaotic and exciting at the same time. So, so there's nothing up there in the building, but you can bet that some of our goals, or some of the committee goals, will center on the need to be prepared for 2019 and this building project, if we will. Yeah, Kimberly.
On the values selected,
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about, or differentiate a positive force in the community and excitement about the congregation's future and role in the community? I mean, I can see how they can be different, but to me, they seem like they could be combined, and obviously, y'all decided, you know, for them to be two separate things, so can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, sure, I'll try. Both of those, I believe, positive force in the community, it was one that was on our, let me just look at my notes here, was on our list in both 2017 and 2018. And, you know, we have a lot of things that we're doing in the community. You know, that 6-inch long list of things that social outreach is doing just doesn't happen. So we are a pretty positive force in the community, and how do we continue to do that? And we think that's important to do that. I think what's different though is that, you know, there's oops, sorry, wrong button. There is an excitement in the air, and we're excited about where we're going and what we're doing and how our future can fit in and help the community as well. So I think that's where that's at. And there's a lot of talk about that word excitement. And in some of the goals, specifically we wanted to perhaps include the word excite in the goal because it's there. So I think that's there, because we do sense this excitement that's out there, and we wanted to somehow capture that as one of the values as we go forward. Great question. Any other thoughts?
I'd just add to what you said, Chuck, to Kimberly's question is, one thing, and we've talked about that in terms of our building, and I think a lot of aspects of our ministry, especially in the last couple of years, is that we aren't just excited about these things for ourselves, that's a good way to continue pushing us out. So I think in some ways it's good for us to have two things reminding us to be always outward looking, because especially as things get a little messy around here, the tendency will be to just hunker down and do what we have to do and just get ourselves through it. But if we have that continually still pushing us out, I think is important.
feel free to lean on it, mark on it, do whatever you want. And if you've got some comments, please share your thoughts and your ideas. If that
So the
is
back
very,
is actually the goal, the 5 goals.
sure, yeah, I think
So you're going over the 4 values, but these are the 5 goals.
that's correct. Yeah, so if you've got some thoughts on the goals, you know, shoot us an email, or you all have new directories now. That was one of our goals for last year. So you've got new directories, it's online and it's hard copy, so you've got both options to choose from. But I just, you know, as I talk to council members who've been on the council for a couple of years, I can see the excitement that they have, that they bring to the meeting now. And as I visit with members, I just feel it, it's there, and we've got a lot going on, and so